With MSO News Sports, I'm Rick Moore, and really happy to be joined now by the Salem News reporters from their respective newsrooms, Paul Leighton and Dustin Luca. And gentlemen, welcome back once again. Thank you.
Thanks, Rick.
Happy to have you. Thank you for having us.
All right, we're going to start. There's a lot of human interest stories in the paper recently. I want to get to those, but one that does jump off the page initially, Bill Newell had it up here on our website, had to do with a public official in Beverly, Paul, named Mike Collins, who received a national award, I believe, and quite a story of what this man is involved in.
Yes, Mike Collins has been the City of Beverly's Department of Public Services Commissioner for more than 20 years. And he won a big award from the American Public Works Association, which is the group that represents public service workers across the country. Just looking at my story, they have more than 30,000 members, but they give out awards every year at their annual conference. And Mike Collins was named the Professional Manager of the Year in Public Works Emergency Management. So, but Mike he has so much experience in knowledge, and he's been, as the mayor, the mayor read a proclamation at the city council meeting last week about this award, and he said how Collins, he oversees all the building projects in the city. So recently in Beverly, that involves the new middle school and the new police station were the two biggest recent projects. But he's got a lot of knowledge about the field. And another part that in the last couple of years, he joined the Task Force 1, which is the FEMA urban search and rescue team that's based up at Beverly Airport. That involves volunteers. Basically, they do get paid when they're deployed, but basically volunteers from all over New England who volunteer to be trained up at their site next to the airport, and they go out and respond to all these disasters across the country. Mike Collins was on the team that was deployed to Florida a couple of years ago for the hurricane. He went up to Vermont for the flooding, and so he does a lot, not just for the city, but he's also volunteering his time for that search and rescue team.
Yeah, Task Force 1 is something I'd like to know more about. You say it's headquartered in Beverly?
Yes, it's they have a site right next to Beverly Airport, so it's out of the way. It's actually most of the time it's behind a locked gate. It's funny because I've written about them for years, and I had really never even been to their site until was it 2 years ago? They had a September 11th commemoration there that was open to the public, and they actually have a small museum on the site because this Task Force 1 team based in Beverly was one of the first teams to respond on September 11th, 2001. Right. And they've been all over the country responding. FEMA, the national agency, has, I think, 30 plus of these teams in various locations around the country. And it's a lot of police and firefighters and people like Mike Collins that have some type of public service. He can help identify like how structurally sound something is. And so there are engineers and there are doctors and nurses, and these are people who volunteer and they come up to Beverly and they do training. They have a big pile of rubble and they search for people. They have canines and they practice searching. That's just one of the aspects of the training that I'm familiar with. So yeah, it's really amazing how they've been they respond to all the, and unfortunately these type of disasters are increasing with climate change and so forth, so they're really busy.
Wow, good story. Thank you, Dustin. A story you've been
Thanks.
following, and it was fascinating last time we talked about the possibility of jobs in the area through schools and so on concerning the offshore wind turbine project, and it's back in the news again.
Yeah, and it's back in the news for reasons that I don't think anybody could have ever expected, not even the body that voted it down. So basically, the big thing that happened it was last week at this point, Conservation Commission in Salem, it's been tasked with approving an order of conditions on the offshore wind project. And this is like So Conservation Commission, they're created across the state to represent municipalities, towns, cities, dealing with wetlands issues, protecting wetlands, streams, waterways, riverbeds. So whenever you're dealing with anything that's near a pond, a swamp, a river, conservation commissions will typically get involved. And because the offshore wind project is so close to the water, Conservation Commission has to weigh in on it. And when they approve a project, they're basically looking at stormwater runoff and things that would impact area wetlands. So generally speaking, to get approval from them, you have to make sure that you're actually protecting the local wildlife, the wetlands, the plants around them. And there's been a lot of concerns about this project, namely from the perspective of a couple different design choices. One that was coming up in Conservation Commission here was that they wanted to have a single catch basin for 16 acres of basically cleared land. So if you can imagine, when you have a torrential downpour, 16 acres of water is going to be rushing toward this one little catch basin that's supposed to catch it all. And the company's like, well, no, it's going to, the overload of that's going to go out into the harbor like it does today. And that's kind of not agreeable to a conservation commission. So there's that. There was concerns about lights, and toward the end of the meeting, they had to face a decision where they either keep the hearing open or they actually take a vote on the order of conditions. They weren't comfortable taking a vote, but Crowley, the company behind the project, told them to, it was like, no, let's vote on this. We feel like we've addressed everything. And when they were put into a position to vote, they tried to vote in favor, and they went 0-5 in favor, which means that vote died. And they had to do an alternative, which was to deny the project, and they went 4-1 in favor. So that shocked a lot of people. Nobody was expecting it whatsoever. I don't think anybody was expecting a vote to actually happen. And then when it happened, nobody was expecting it to go down. There was a lot of questions about what this means for the project. Is the project dead? And the short-term answer is that apparently there's a pathway for the Conservation Commission to reopen the hearing and reconsider the vote, basically. There's been some legal questions flying around about that. And it looks like there's a lot of concern from people who basically say, look, a public body just rejected this project. Is it really fair for that body to then say, oh, no, let's think about that again? Because when you look at like zoning, for example, if you say no to something, you can't say yes again for at least another year. So there's all kinds of timelines and things like that. So there's a lot of uncertainty going into the future, but the only thing that's really known is that the project will be coming back for the Conservation Commission either in October or November. That's, if they can meet their posting deadlines and things like that. But there's all kinds of confusion on the project now. Looks like it's going forward, but I've got a couple of concerned residents that are basically saying not so fast.
When you talk about the project, Dustin, I mean, at first I was thinking about the windmills offshore, but this has to do with the building of the turbines. Is that so? The project will be a building, or there's currently a building there that's going to be overhauled?
So it's going to be mostly open space with very, very large machinery that is responsible for kind of building the pieces that become the turbine. So what you might see on the property, you'll see the blades basically lying down on racks. The racks are going to be 3 blades high, which is still going to be taller than a house. At least from the drawings that I've seen, it's going to be not a ton taller than a house, but it's going to be taller than a house. And then you also have the columns that those blades sit on, and then the nacelle on the top that the blades all connect to. So if you think about the column and then the nacelle and then the blades, those are the pieces that are created at the yard, and then they're basically hauled out on the water to Martha's Vineyard where they're going to be built. So a lot of the concern, like one of the other concerns that came up with Conservation Commission, is that they want to have, when you're driving down the highway, you have these lights kind of in the middle that are really super tall. They're called high mast lights. They're about 120 feet tall, and there's 15 of them proposed for the site. Now, if you think about your average house being 50, 60, maybe 70 feet tall, 120 is a little taller than that. And their reason for it is because the light needs to be able to shine on top of and over the parts that they're building. So that kind of gives you an idea of how big these parts are. If in order to light them up at night, you need a light that's 120 feet tall.
Wow. Okay. Well, now, all right, I got a better picture of that. Thank you. Lordy mercy. All right, we'll go back to Paul over in Beverly. The mayor's preliminary, Paul. I don't know what the reaction is over there. Of course, I think Mayor Cahill was certainly favored to be the front runner, but it seems like Jamie Zarella had a pretty good showing.
Yeah, he did okay. So Jamie Zarella is a first-time candidate for political office in Beverly. He's the owner of Big Jim's Auto Body in Beverly, which was started by his father years ago. So he's a Beverly native, well known around the city. He has never run for office before, but he was a candidate for mayor. There was another, a third candidate also along the Mayor Cahill. So that's why there was this preliminary election on Tuesday. So Cahill finished first and Zarella finished second. They advanced to the November election on November 7th. So those two advanced. But I mean, Cahill still won by like about 1,000 votes, and the turnout's relatively small in the preliminary election. It was about 13%, I think, in this one. But Zarella did win Ward 1, which is Ryleside, which is also where the Hall Whitaker Bridge has been closed for like a year, and a lot of people are upset about that. So it's pretty easy to make a connection there that's the one ward that Zarella won. But Zarella has, to his credit, as a first-time candidate, he's raised quite a bit of money. He's got lots of signs out. You see people on the weekends as supporters out there with signs at the busy intersections in the city. So, so he is mounting a legitimate campaign. Sometimes, people decide to run and they get you need 100 signatures to get on the ballot for mayor, and then they don't do much beyond that. They don't really raise a lot of money, and they don't have a lot of signs or, on an active. But he is, so it's going to be in November. But I think Zarella's he's going to make it interesting.
Yeah, very much so, very much so. Dustin, I don't know. The elections are not the big story right now in Salem. Am I right?
So the season's been a little quiet in Salem. They just had a preliminary election in Ward 1, which is the ward that includes the Point and like the Willows and Winter Island and things like that. They've got races in wards 2 through 4, and then city council at large and school committee. But it's the season's been a little quiet. There's been a ton of controversy. 3 of the wards don't even have races because 2 of the candidates pulled out, and then the 3rd ward nobody ran against a person. So it's been a little quieter, but there's still an election going on.
Well, you used the word controversy, and that brings up an article in today's paper on the front page of the Salem News about a banned book club. Tell me all about it.
Oh, yeah, God, I love this story. So basically, so the first week of October, generally speaking, is National Banned Book Week. And you might think, okay, books are banned. This book is banned. Why do we want to read a banned book? Well, the reason why is because we want to look at why the book is banned, what ideas is it challenging, and let's foster an intellectual conversation about that and actually see what we can do to learn as individuals through this book that other people say you can't read. So that's kind of the spirit behind it. It's for intellectual freedom. It goes against censorship. And there's 2 things happening in Salem this weekend. So there's on Saturday, kind of across the country, there's these kind of read-ins where you basically go to a public place and you sit down and you read, kind of like a sit-in. And it's kind of centered around the idea of banned books. That's happening at Salem Public Library from 10 to 12 on Saturday. So definitely check that out. The other thing, and this is the thing that really got my attention, you see these little free libraries all over the place. They're really big. It's basically what neighborhoods will do to try to keep kids reading and kind of diving into, being a bookworm. So there are these little watertight cabinets that people, they leave a book, they take a book. You see them all over the place. City Hall is officially putting one of its own up, actually dedicated to the spirit of banned books, where they're basically going to curate a collection of books that have been banned in other parts of the country, in part kind of identified through the American Libraries Association. And they're going to be kind of stacking this. I know Wicked Good Books around the corner is going to be providing some of the material to be put in there. And it's going to be a place, if you want a really, really free way of getting a banned book, go to City Hall in Salem, Massachusetts. That's the place to do it.
That's fascinating. That is good old Massachusetts, man.
Yeah.
Come through.
If you think about it, it's a city that, the idea of intolerance is locked on the city's image because of the witch trials. So if there's a place to have a conversation like this, kind of like Voices Against Injustice and the Salem Award and everything like that, it's Salem, Massachusetts.
Perfect. Absolutely perfect. All right. Human interest story. Paul, some big goings on out of the Beverly High School Library.
Yes. Beverly High School librarian Barbara Fecto. She's been the librarian for I think 20 years or so. And she is on Jeopardy this week. She was on last night. She'll be on tonight. and she'll be on, tomorrow night too, because it's part of a tournament. So even if she doesn't quote unquote win tonight, she's on tomorrow night. But actually, I just spoke with her. The story has not been in the Salem News yet. So Ricky, you got the scoop here. And but Barbara's great. She's really funny. She's got a great personality. She's very smart. But the thing is, this is her second time on Jeopardy. She was on 2 years ago and did pretty well. She actually lost to that guy. What's his name? Matt Amodio. Does that name sound familiar? One of these guys that went on to win for like a year. And, I think he's the all-time winner in Jeopardy. And she came the closest to beating him 2 years ago. So Jeopardy, I guess, just started recently this second chance tournament where they invite contestants that have been on before. And Barb got invited on. This was taped back in July. She flew out to California. And the Jeopardy rules are like, she can't tell me how she did. That's the rules on it. And so she didn't tell me how she did. But I know she won last night because I watched it. And she's on tonight and tomorrow. So it's fun. And if she wins this one, the winner of this, the second chance tournament advances to the Tournament of Champions in October, where she get a chance to
Fantastic.
make some good money. So.
I've been watching Jeopardy for probably 50 years, and it's only been on 40. But I've never beaten anybody. I've never won one single night. So
oh my God. No, it's like, you try to play along and it's like, you end up at the end of the show, you're realizing how much how little at least I do.
Well, what gets me is how I do know some answers sometimes, like, where'd that come from? How do I know that?
Yeah. Oh, and you can't remember?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's the worst. But anyway.
Ones I can't miss when it gets in the math category. Math and space, I have to get those. And otherwise, I'm great story. We'll keep our eye on that. And Dustin, a story that jumped out at me. I don't know if I've ever seen the movie Hocus Pocus in its entirety. I've seen bits of it. But are you telling us that for Haunted Happenings, some of the original cast of that movie will be in Salem in person?
Yes. So this is kind of a big thing. And I've actually got a copy of the newest Haunted Happenings magazine right here. And inside it on page 42 is an ad advertising 3 of the 4 original cast that were not in Hocus Pocus 2 coming. The 4th one, by the time they made this ad, they didn't have verification on the 4th one, and they got that recently. So what this basically boils down to, there's going to be a couple of events in October where actors, the 3 children from the original Hocus Pocus, and then Max the cat is going to be coming. I got the name right. Because I'm not 100% up on my Hocus Pocus lore either, which is like a sin to admit as a Salem reporter. But so basically, they've got 2 events. They've got a costume bash at Bit Barn October 20th, and then they've also got a signing on Salem Common that's going to be a ticketed event through just a bunch of Halloween.com. But they're going to be bringing these 4 people back to Salem. They were, of course, in Salem in 1992 for the filming of Hocus Pocus, which was released in 1993, making this the 30th anniversary. And it's actually the first time they've come back to Salem as a group. There's one of the 4 gentlemen, Omri, did come back last year, and that's kind of where this all started. He was basically told Brian Sims, who plays the face of Bora, to basically say, hey, set something up to bring me back. Not Bora, it was the Horror Squad podcast that did that. And then Bora actually had a connection with the others, who then just kind of unified it all to the point that now they're all super jazzed about coming to Salem. And I've been talking to Brian about it, and he's of course talking to the cast, and they're all thrilled about coming back because Hocus Pocus kind of has a special presence in Salem, where because it was filmed there, because it's got a couple of iconic locations, it just draws people to Salem all year round. And the residents tend to get burned out by that. And interestingly enough, the actual Hocus Pocus house on Ocean Avenue, it's lived in by a couple of elderly folks who've lived in it basically since before the movie was made, and they love the revelry. They love the people showing up all year to take pictures of their house and things like that. This is kind of on the opposite side of that, where you actually have the faces from the movie actually returning, instead of somebody coming to say, oh, hey, I saw that for 2 minutes in a movie. It's, people who were on the scene 30 years ago, seeing a totally different Salem. The Samantha statue didn't exist back then. Pretty sure Destination Salem didn't even exist back then. So, right.
Wow, that's fascinating. Another reason that I probably won't be going into Salem in October, because I won't be able to get out. Geez, this is great, guys. I appreciate it. I just wonder, just kind of a general question as we wrap this thing up. I know, Dustin. In October, it's all haunted happenings all the time. And Paul, is there a specific thing in fall that you annually have had to cover, or something that pops up every year that usually comes around this time of year?
Good question. Does the Topsfield Fair count? That starts this weekend.
Absolutely. I don't know how.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah, they have the big pumpkin way off, I think, on Friday night, which I won't be covering, but no, I think that's the other, that's the other big event on North Shore is the Topsfield Fair. I did cover over the summer how there was this controversy in the town, how the Topsfield Fairgrounds have been hosting these other events, musical events and laser light shows. And neighbors were upset, but the Essex Agricultural Society, which owns the Topsfield Fairgrounds and runs the Topsfield Fair, they say they need these other events to raise revenue to keep the Topsfield Fair going. And they actually the town went to court, against the Agricultural Society. It got resolved, and one of the events was held and one wasn't. But anyway, that's something to look. That's an issue to keep an eye on, whether or not they're going to be able to continue to run these other events to help fund and keep the Topsfield Fair going.
I actually just got a text a little while ago from my stepdaughter, who my granddaughter is going to be in the opening parade at Topsfield Fair on Friday night.
Oh, wow. Okay.
A float. So, unfortunately, I'll be at the Danvers football game, but I'm sure video of that somehow. Thank you, Paul. Dustin, is it haunted happenings all the time now in October?
Basically feels like it. I'm actually working on a story today for tomorrow's paper that's going to be talking about kind of what's planned ahead, road shutdowns. You've got the Haunted Happenings Parade is the first Thursday of every October, so that's going to be happening on Thursday next week. The Pet Parade is the week after, and then you've got all kinds of other stuff. So obviously hauntedhappenings.org is the place to go, salem.com, salem.org, all the usual websites. If you're going to come to Salem this fall, don't come by car, find another way to do it. Because if you're going to come by car, you're going to spend half the day looking for parking, and nobody wants to do that. So